figuring out how the hell do you talk about Trump or don't talk about Trump.
Like, how do you talk about politics in this era and this time? And like, it's not easy. So that's a challenge because you once you unplug, you are not up to speed on what's happening in the world.
Like the value, like what value are we actually providing? All right, let's just get into it. Welcome to the You Need to Listen podcast. I am Kristin Brey. He is Steve Scaffidi. And
we work together during the week.
Yes, we do. And I don't even know how to frame this one because we are only 9 months in. I think officially 9 months into the Trump administration.
Well, it is October almost.
And this is from a more personal level. I think a lot of times we talk about things from a more general standpoint. We try to provide analysis. We look at trends. We read other smarter people's analysis. But this is like from a very personal point of view of working in the media and figuring out how the hell do you talk about Trump or don't talk about Trump, because not talking about him is a choice. But it's like we're 9 months in back into the craziness. And it's not like he ever really went away for the 4 years he wasn't president.
It was like he was like assistant president because he was always around.
But I am finding it so exhausting, one, to even keep up with everything that's happening all the time. All the court cases, tariffs, what's going on with the Fed, what is going on with Pete Hegseth, calling all the generals in, and having one, even understanding and reading all the news as it's happening, but then also trying to, as someone who has not worked in government and doesn't necessarily have always the context for why this is unprecedented, what this actually means, and trying to be able to wrap my head around it even more to then be able to talk about it in any kind of a coherent, intelligent way. There's that aspect to it. And then there's the things that come in of like, do you try to talk about it in a way that is, this is scary, this is unprecedented, this is authoritarianism and raising the alarm? Do you try to talk about it in a way that is, you don't ostracize people who voted for Trump or people who are MAGA and trying to bridge the divide and work on the civil discourse between all of us? Or do you just ignore it altogether and talk about like local stuff and like focus on the things that you can control in your community, in your city, in your state? It's like I am so intellectually overwhelmed and burnt out, and we're only 9 months in. And I know some of that is because it's literally my job. This is what I signed up for, and so I shouldn't be complaining. But that is how I'm feeling this week, and I don't know how you feel about it, but it is maddening, and I have to imagine anyone who works in media feels, or at least political media, feels similarly.
It's interesting you said that because I was at a wedding a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people, variations on the theme, like how do you talk about politics in this era and this time, and like it's not easy. And one of the, I guess to sort of answer your question, one of the ways that I sort of get out of it is I sort of step away for at least a day on the weekend. So from like midday Saturday to midday Sunday, I don't look at anything. I don't look at my phone. I leave it on my desk at home. I'm not watching news. I just avoid it. This is a challenge because one, we do what we do. We have a show about politics generally, specifically, I should say. So that's a challenge because you once you unplug, you are not up to speed on what's happening in the world. It is so infuriating to cover politics now. Even beyond Trump, it's not just Donald Trump. I know I have family members and friends who love Donald Trump. They often say they love the policy, not the person. I would argue those two things are very mixed up, together, commingled. So I don't really get that. But it's not just Donald Trump. I see elected officials on both sides saying things they know aren't true because that works for their party or their politics. From Ted Cruz to, pick a Democratic senator, whoever you want, or elected official. I get that people have policy differences. And again, not to be the old man in the room, but there used to be ways to wrangle these out. You had conversations, even in Congress, that were intellectual, based on like real things, not feelings. That's been replaced by whatever this is now. So the frustration of talking about something that I think is inherently absurd is maddening. And I'm equally as frustrated by people who defend absurdity, trying to make intellectual arguments. I hear it on talk radio all the time. It's like, what in the hell are you saying? You know that's not true. And there are people who do what we do, who go to work every day in this market and beyond, saying things they know aren't true.
Oh, yeah.
Yet they pretend that they're Christian, they have values, they're on the right side of things, not using the political right, but just the proper way to do things, when that's not true. And I always often remind those people that political lying is still lying. It's often more dangerous than just a white lie. It actually has implications beyond you. It has implications for the general public. And I'm continually disappointed by people who perpetuate the whataboutism. For example, the choice in the last election was Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, vice president and former president. And I've talked to people on my side of the aisle, which is right, Republican, who say, well, the choice was clear. We don't like Kamala Harris. No, the choice wasn't clear at all. You have someone who's a felon, bankrupt how many times? 9 times, something like that, who deliberately misstates or outright lies about facts of history, facts of the economy, facts about government over and over again. Yet you whataboutism and say to me, well, you never talked about Joe Biden like that. Yeah, we did. We talked about the economy in Joe Biden. We talked about COVID in Joe Biden. And at the end of his presidency, we talked about the cognitive failures of Joe Biden. So don't tell me we didn't talk about that. But when I see that sort of whataboutism or the laziness of Republicans who pretend they're never Trumpers, but still probably voted for him but don't own up to it, that bothers the hell out of me. It's dishonest. But yet that seems to be some sort of remedy for their political makeup, that they have to sort of reconcile what is ridiculous to sort of make a political argument, somehow rationalize what I think is a bad decision.
So then going back to so yes, I think you can say that it is both frustrating, but we still are choosing to do it, right? We're here. We haven't quit.
I love my job.
We haven't quit yet.
Yeah.
But what do you feel like is, because I don't have an answer to this right now, of the value, what value are we actually providing? And that is where I come back to, is what is useful in this time when it comes to talking about Trump? Is it getting experts on to put things into context? Is it constantly beating the drum? But it's like I said it recently when we were talking about the boy who cried wolf. When everything is a sign of authoritarianism, but none of it seems to be raising the alarm to the extent that enough people are like, I don't want this to be changing anything. Is it worth continuing to call it that? Or do you try to have a different method? This is I think where are you feeling like you're at in what's valuable in how you talk about it?
Where I'm at right now is I respect the office. I will give this president, as much as I don't think he's a great president, I think he's dangerous, credit for something I think that has worked, or credit for correctly identifying what the public, in his case, the voters, he would refer to them at or whatever, think is important. And he has gotten wins on border policy. He's done that. He's correctly identified. Now, his means may not be the right way to do it, but he's correctly identified that most Americans thought there was a problem at the border. Most parties thought that for the last 30, 40 years. And he's done something about it. We can argue about how he did it.
Well, no, I mean,
That's one.
I think there's two different things. I think there is the securing the border of who's coming over, and I think there is ICE going after people who are not criminals, who've been here for 30 years, and ripping them apart from their families. And I think there's two different sentiments on that. I think most people
Agreed.
still agree that stopping how many people were coming over was different than what we're doing with the people who are already here, especially people who are not criminals.
This president has made a conscious decision through ICE, Tom Homan, and others in the administration to take people who were here illegally and not discriminate, not have any sort of review, actually breaking the law and yanking them from this country, sending them off to God knows where. That is insanely wrong. It's illegal. And this administration, this president, and anyone involved in that will pay a price at some point in the future. So those are two different things. But the perception that there was a problem at the border was a correct assumption by this president. I also give him credit today on the show for understanding that the only way you can really have peace is to start somewhere, and he did that in the Middle East with his latest 20-point peace plan. But going back to this, the way I approach it is I will continue to tell people honestly what I think about the president on my show. Is it easy? Hell no. I get hate mail. I get my life threatened on occasion in sort of these weird ways that people do that. So I've had to filter some of that. But I'm not going to stop doing that because I think it's important. And the way that we do it on our show, point taken, is we have both sides represented, which maybe you don't realize it, is a very unique thing in talk radio. There's left-leaning stations and networks, and there's right-leaning stations and networks. We're a station that is primarily news with some talk that says, we're not doing it that way. We're going to give you Josh Showman, who's running for governor in the state of Wisconsin on the Republican side. We're going to give you Missy Hughes, who's running for governor on the Democratic side. It's a rare thing nowadays, but that's how I sort of reconcile what I think is driving me crazy, is by trying to present what I think is a reasonable approach to looking at the real way both sides should be looked at, by presenting candidates from both sides that actually are not screaming at each other.
But do you think it's important for like us on our show to be talking about Trump every day? And
not every day.
And keeping because I think this is the thing. It's like there is the reporters who are actually that is their job of reporting what is happening and not letting things happen in the darkness. And then there is a pundit class who is talking about those things. And there's a lot of them. There's no shortage of people, and there's no shortage of conversation around Trump and his administration and everything that is happening, to the point that it's starting to feel like a lot of noise. And for me, I think the whole reason I do any of this is in the attempt to add value. It's not just to hear myself talk, right? And so whether that's, and I think that is sometimes where I'm like, is it valuable to be talking about him? And if we're going to talk about him, is it to continue to beat the drum of this is not normal, don't let this be normal? Or is it to try to talk about it in a way that we can reach people who don't think it's that bad? I think it's what are we doing? That is my big thing right now. I was like, what are we doing and what is helpful? Because I think there's some people who, there's certain folks who are want to continue to talk about how scary of times this is. But then if you turn off your phone, for a lot of us, not everyone, there's certainly a lot of people who are being affected and feeling the ramifications of this administration's decisions immediately. There's a lot of people who aren't. If you just turned off your phone and didn't watch the news, has much changed? I don't know. I'm clearly a little burnt out. I wish I was going on vacation.
Yeah. And trust me, vacations help. But here's the thing. Even on vacation, I'll be in Sicily when this airs, probably, or recently coming back. I can guarantee, because I just experienced this in Scotland, when I go into a public place and they overhear our little group talking about anything and they hear American accents, what do you think the first question is?
Yeah.
What do you think about Trump? Almost guaranteed. I got it in France, I got it in Germany, I got it in Scotland, and I guarantee I'll hear it in Sicily. I do my best. I do a radio show, I talk about politics. I'm not a fan of the president, didn't vote for him, but I understand that he won the votes. And in America, that's sort of how it works. You have rights associated. And I would argue this president doesn't understand the responsibilities of the position from an American perspective, not just a voter perspective, but that's a different conversation for a different day. I think you have to do, and you do this, you're not realizing it. You approach the show from the perspective of a woman, a smart woman, a mom, educated on politics, educated on a lot of things. That perspective matters because, to be honest, there's not a lot of that. It's a lot of guys who look like me in this country talking about politics. What does that guarantee? You're going to get a lot of the same opinions. You offer a different opinion, informed, smart, sometimes controversial. I do the same thing. You think people love me for criticizing the president? No, I get a lot of hate mail. But I understand that goes with the territory. So you're already fulfilling that responsibility. You just probably don't realize it.
Maybe.
And that's people say, why do you do that? Why would you want to do that? Because I care about the country. Because I care, if you're a communicator, which I think we both are, you want to take that ability to communicate, to talk effectively, to communicate things that matter, and share that with people who maybe can learn something. You always laugh at me when I say listen better, be smarter to the audience, but I want that from the audience. Like, you do a lot of homework. I do a lot of homework. And I realize I call it homework because that's just how I was raised. I read a lot. I watch a lot. I consume a lot. Not because I necessarily want to, but I want to be informed on these things.
But this is the thing. It is an endless stream. I constantly feel like I have, like, the things that I want to read versus what I actually have time to read. The gap is huge, right? And so that is, I think, sometimes my sense of, like, when is it ever enough? When am I am I on any given show, on any given day? Like, are we covering the right topic? Are we covering it in the right way? What should we give airtime to? What should we not? What is a passing, like, the fucking foreign film tariffs? Like, it's like, well, that's probably not going to go anywhere. So do we talk about it at all? Like, do we talk about Comey? Do we talk about the shutdown? Do we talk about this stupid Pete Hegseth thing? And so this is me just venting, I think,
which
of
is
the
good.
exhaustion of so much is happening. It all feels important. Maybe not all of it is. And it's also the always not knowing, like, what is something that we as a country will bounce back from as far as all these norms being thrown out the window? And is this the anomaly of the era we're in because of Trump? Is this, like, when we talk back to the era of McCarthyism, and that was a thing that we went through as a country and then we moved beyond it. Mm-hmm. Like, is this an era, or are we forever changed? And what is any of our roles to keep us moving in the direction that any of us think is the right direction? Because where I think we should go as a country is very different than someone else. And so is it like, am I an activist? Am I a pundit? Like, what? I don't know. I'm having an existential crisis, obviously. And
to be an activist.
Help me, Steve!
To be an activist is or an advocate is different than being a radio talk show host who talks about politics, because we're not that.
But then what is our role? Is it just
our role is to inform, right? Educate.
Is it?
Entertain, yes, because if it's not entertaining, no one's going to listen.
Well, yeah.
Right? And engage. Make them want to come back. That's our role. That's the 3 E's I've had ever since I started. That's always how I approach every show. It's why, for example, we can do a hard political topic. Today we talked about the Middle East.
Yeah.
And then get to something that's not heavy.
Did we do anything that was not heavy today?
I think we had some fun.
Because, like, even talking about the golf stuff and the Ryder Cup, like, that turned heavy quick.
Yeah, it did. Well, that's a whole nother how we act towards each other. I know you're stressing on this because you've had a lot going on and you're a busy mom and all that stuff. I feel it the same way, just in a different way, right? I feel like this is our moment to tell people that there are ways to look at these things that aren't fueled by anger. I just had this conversation with a retired priest last week. Hour-long conversation about politics and faith. And he, like you, in an earlier episode, talked about cycles. You mentioned McCarthy. Mm-hmm. That was an incredibly hate-filled, tense time.
And scary, right? Like, people were getting targeted. People were getting arrested. People were getting subpoenaed. Like the entertainment industry, right? Like, it was a scary time.
Or go back to World War II when Japanese were rounded up. Like, seriously, in this country, we're rounding up people that are really citizens, but they have Japanese heritage, so we're going to round them up and put them in a prison camp, which was horrific. So there are cycles to hate. I hope that this is as bad as it gets. Now, it doesn't mean it's not going to be worse.
But the only reason that this is the thing. So cycles end because there's people who are fighting for things to be different. And I think this is sometimes my internal struggle is, are you trying to be on the side of doing things to make the world better? Or are you here just to be a mirror to where we are now so people have information?
I do both. I want to react to what the public is reacting, because that's the engaged part. They're actually thinking about and talking about the things we're talking about. And two, also I want to change the world for the better. You always, you don't, but other people, they text in when I say I was a mayor before. I was a mayor that dealt with a mass shooting.
Yeah.
I can remember every moment of the first 3 days after that, because I sat in my chair crying my eyes out the night that it happened, because I wasn't ready for that. I was elected to be a business guy, to develop. And then that was handed to me. You'd see the looks on the people's faces where they're lost their mom. Kamal Saini, my friend, and his brother lost their mom. She got shot in the back while praying. Imagine that. Handed to me as the leader of the city. I had to talk to the world in a 60-second soundbite on, thoughts and prayers, was the terminology. These are big moments, and how we react to them, whether you're a mayor or a talk show host, matter. I still think they matter. So our role, I think, should be to do the 3 E's, but serve a sort of as a sounding board, whether it's by text, whether it's by phone call. We don't take a lot of calls anymore. But sort of reflecting what the public's feeling. And I can tell you, because it's a 50-50 state and in a 50-50 country for the most part, what we're sharing is what people are thinking. Because, again, when I go anywhere, world wedding in Franklin, Wisconsin, they're talking about politics in a sort of a weird way. Not the, hey, what do you think about this policy? But what do you think about Trump? What do you think about pick a candidate, pick an elected official? We have to do this. And part of the mission statement for Point Taken and for me and probably for you is, can we make the world a better place? I am always going to be that guy because I refuse to give in to stupidity and people acting like idiots and people, creating hate. One of the things that causes me the most strife, going back to the story I just told, is when I hear about a mass shooting. It just makes me mad.
But here's a question.
We never learn.
So do you think us talking about Trump most days, because there's something to talk about most days, is doing what we can to make the world a better place?
I don't know that we should talk about Trump every day, but I certainly think
despite the fact that there's something to talk about every day.
Pretty much, yeah. But I think, pick your moments. There's plenty of other stuff to talk about. And, part of what we do is also news-driven. So, for example, we have a race for governor in Wisconsin, which is...
Thank God.
And Supreme Court.
I'm so excited to talk about that.
Yeah, and Supreme Court.
Which that may be less interesting this time around.
Well, especially if the Republicans never get a candidate, which is sort of an ironic thing. We'll keep this one shorter, but here's my take. I'm not a fan of the president. I didn't vote for him any of the races, 16, 20, or 24. I wrote in Nikki Haley. I'm proud of the fact that I wrote in Nikki Haley because I still think she can still be the first female president.
What is she even doing right now?
She's speaking. She's a consultant, and she's...
How much do you think her speaker fee is?
It's probably a lot of money. We would be jealous of how much she makes for a 1-hour speech. I can tell you that. But regardless of that, I want to make sure that people understand that these are stupid times. We just did a whole episode on the era of stupidity, and I believe it is. But doesn't mean I give up. Doesn't mean I don't have faith in people to be smarter at some point, especially about politics.
I'm not talking about giving up personally. I am looking for a North Star as far as to guide our show, to guide how we talk about things, what is useful, what is helpful in these very strange times to the most amount of people who choose to listen and engage with us. Because sometimes I don't want to just be the attention economy of just doing shit for ratings is not something I'm interested in. Just doing stuff to incite anger and get people more riled up is not something I'm interested in. But it's trying to figure out what in this time is actually of value to people. And because that is, to me, what is actually important versus stroking my own ego or anything. It's right. Is this helpful? And sometimes talking about him every day does not feel helpful. It just feels...
And I'm not saying we should talk about every day.
No. I'm just saying it feels like the attempt to understand what's happening.
Yeah, we'll drive it.
It's a lot of Trump.
So what I would say to you, because I know you now and we've known each other for a while now, you expressed more positive emotion, right, about what we've talked about. You've expressed concerns that I think most Americans feel, regardless of who they voted for. They still feel it, even though they might not admit it. And I highlighted a case in point earlier, that people who pretend to be one thing and do or vote a different way. In this 20 minutes or so, that most people who consider themselves talk radio stars in this market and elsewhere ever do. They go into it with talking points. They go into it trying to convince one side they're right, the other side's evil. You don't share that. You're trying to do the right thing, which is what my dad told me all the time. Do the right thing. It's not that hard, or it may be hard, but you just still figure it out. So your sort of North Star should be the fact that you actually care, that you actually spend the time, you actually expend your energy and time to deliver messaging that I think has to be heard. That's your North Star. You're good at it.
Now I'm going to cry.
It's okay to cry. I occasionally cry, usually when the Packers lose.
Or tie.
Or tie. She's Kristin Brey. What's your email?
KBREY@goodkarmabrands.com.
She's smart, brilliant, and funny. I'm smart, sort of. Not brilliant. Occasionally funny.
You're funny sometimes.
Yeah. Although my old boss said I was not funny at all, which still scars me to this day. Damn Wexler. Anyway, mine is Steve Scaffidi, 2Fs, 1D at WTMG.com. This is You Need to Listen. It's not just a podcast. It's an instruction. It's a command. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back in a couple weeks with a new
2 weeks.
episode. Yeah. God, what are we going to talk about?
Hopefully not Trump.
Hopefully not Trump. See you next time.